The following is a presentation of ESPN on ABC.
What started back in March will conclude today. A championship decided between two men. One of them the points leader, Dario Franchitti. He leads by 3 over the man in second place, Scott Dixon. Dixon looking for his second title. He won the IndyCar championship back in 2003. What are they fighting for? That trophy right there. And the $1 million that goes with it. 2007. A season of celebration. A season of frustration and emotion. A season of victory and a season of defeat. Where momentum shifted from a runaway to a takeaway for Dario Franchitti. Contact the teammates!
And Scott Dixon will be the new IndyCar Series points leader.
Last week, the drama of Detroit emerged when Scott Dixon's spin collected Franchitti. Dario still finished the race and regained the points lead. It all comes down to this. 2 drivers separated by 3 points. 1 champion. It's the final stop of the 07 season in Chicago. And we welcome you live just southwest of the windy city of Chicago. We're at Chicagoland Speedway for the final race of the 07 campaign. It is the Peak Antifreeze IndyCar 300 presented by Mr. Clean. And already drivers, if you've seen, are in the cockpits as we are waiting for the command to start engines. Dario Franchitti will start on pole today. Scott Dixon will start in the number 6 position, but he will have help from his teammate Dan Weldon, who will start in the number 5 spot right alongside. We welcome you to Firestone Race Day, where we'll set the stage for this climactic moment of the 07 campaign. And right now, it's time to send it trackside for those most famous words to get this final race underway at Chicagoland.
Race fans, it's time for those most famous words in motorsports. Please welcome Executive Vice President of Merchandising for AutoZone, Jim Shea, to give that command.
Ladies and gentlemen, start your engines.
So the engines come to life for the final time here in 2007, and you can feel the electricity again beginning to build as we know that today it will be the day that we decide the 2007 championship. Hello again, everybody. Glad that you're with us for the next 2 hours. Talked to both drivers, Dario Franchitti and Scott Dixon. Both said they slept like babies last night. You've been in this situation, Scott Dixon. Do you believe him?
Marty, I don't believe they slept at all, you know, and I actually think it's harder sometimes on the parents and the family members. Spoke to Ron Dixon, Scott's dad, and he said, you know something, I haven't slept for the last couple of nights. I get up in the morning, the first thing I think about is this championship. A lot of pressure on the family, I think, too.
And I realized I just put Scott Dixon in the booth. He's really Scott Goodyear. It's okay. I'm a little excited about this day, too. Let's talk a little bit about the drama that's been going on all over the place. I mean, the last couple of races have been fantastic.
Really have been. And you know something, I look back at that and I think of some of the championship points that have been lost. But if Andretti Green Racing loses this championship, I think you can put it down to Sonoma with Marco Andretti and Dario Franchitti getting together. And I'm not sure it was either one of the drivers' faults. I put it down to the management of allowing both those cars to make contact in turn 1. If they don't get the championship today, I think it rests on management's shoulders.
Well, let's take a look at the championship points chase, and you'll see the 3-point margin between first and second. Now, Tony Kanaan mathematically has a shot, but he's got to win the race and hope that the other 2 drop out very, very early. Everybody else from 4th on back has been mathematically eliminated. Now, there's been a lot of drama on the track, as we pointed out the last couple of races, but now there's drama off the track. For that, let's bring in Vince Welch.
Well, Marty, the huge story in the IndyCar paddock this weekend centers around Dario Franchitti's move to Chip Ganassi's NASCAR program. Now, Franchitti and Ganassi have both refused comment on this story this weekend, but my source close to this situation tells me that the move is indeed imminent. And when I spoke to Dario about it prior to this weekend, he was surprised at my knowledge of the details, and while he stopped short of confirming the switch, he did agree that he would be running some NASCAR events yet this year, which he would have to do in order to be eligible for the 2008 Daytona 500. Now, what happens today has a direct effect on when Franchitti would be eligible. But when he does become eligible, expect an announcement from Chip Ganassi Racing that Franchitti will be joining the NASCAR program with a deal of up to 5 years. Jack Arute?
So for Chip Ganassi, there's mixed emotions today because his future employed driver, Franchitti, may keep his currently employed driver, Scott Dixon, from winning his second championship. Now, I spoke to Scott Dixon just before he got in the car, asked him what his marching orders were for today. He said, we're going to change it up just a little bit. I'm no longer concerned about Franchitti. What I am concerned about is going out and winning this race. He said, if we do that, then the championship should be ours. Now, there is a third driver that has a shot at winning this championship. For more on that, here's Brienne Pettigo.
That's right, Jack. Mathematically, Tony Kanaan can still win this championship, but not only would he have to win the race, lead the most laps, there would have to be considerable misfortune for Dixon and Franchitti. I spoke with Tony yesterday, and he told me that he no longer considers himself a contender for this year's championship. He simply wants to leave Chicago with win number 6 and do everything he can, within reason, to help teammate Franchitti win his first championship.
All right, thanks, Brienne. We have 1 lap to go before we go green. Let's set the starting grid for you. You'll see our peak antifreeze starting grid across the top. There is Dario Franchitti on the pole, and you're looking back a little bit further. There's Tony Kanaan with a little bit of help for Franchitti as his wingman, and here comes Weldon and Scott Dixon in row number 3.
And finally, they're together. Scott Dixon's been running this championship chase without the help of Dan Weldon, but you can see the Ganassi and Andretti team members here where they're going to start today, and Scott Dixon dearly needs some help from Dan Weldon to be his wingman throughout this race if he wants to have some help drafting around this racetrack.
Half a lap to go on this 1.5-mile oval where the banking is 18 degrees. And take a look, as you can see, 1,700 feet on the front straight, 2,400 feet on the back straight. Pit window 48 to 52 laps. Pace car turns down. It's time for the 07 season to come to a conclusion.
Let's go. Green, 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 green.
Already a battle for the lead going down the back stretch. Sam Hornish, who has won here twice, side by side with Dario Franchitti. Here comes Castroneves right behind Hornish. First lap, who's going to lead it? It will be Hornish, followed by Franchitti, Castroneves, Tony Kanaan, and Scott Dixon is 5th.
Sam Hornish knows how to get around this racetrack, as you mentioned, Marty, but Penske has never won here in the IndyCar, something that's not very often said about racetracks on this circuit.
Team Penske trying to hook up. It has not been the kind of season that anybody expected for that squad. You're on board with Dario Franchitti. We've got a total of 7 on boards. We'll show them to you as they become essential to the coverage of the event. And you can see right now, Franchitti's hugging that low line, but he's got a handful of Team Penske.
Penske cars seem to be working up high very well right now. It looks like the 3-car of Helio Castroneves seems to be a little quicker than his teammate car of Hornish Jr. Now, Hornish wants to get out there and win this event. Only 1 win for both of those drivers in the series so far this year. You recall just a year ago that Penske was really dominating on a lot of these racetracks. Now they're running nose to tail. Look for them to try and stretch a lead over Franchitti. Now, Franchitti's job and whole mission today is to make sure he finishes in front of Scott Dixon, Marty.
And there is Dixon in the number 9 target, Chip Ganassi Racing Machine. His wing, whoa, and look out, they almost touched. Weldon's supposed to be helping him.
Well, that's because the car is coming out from underneath him. It's sliding across the racetrack, and he kept his foot in the gas, and it just moves up a lane, and that's something that you don't want to have happen.
Jack Arute, last year these guys were duking it out as part of the championship battle, and they would not get in lockstep formation for quite a while until Chip Ganassi got on the radio. What's he talking about now?
Well, that won't be the case today. Dan Weldon has already radioed in and told his team, I'm going to go to the front, but I'm going to try and help Scott as well. And then he added the most important caveat. He said, if you guys think I'm messing Scott up in any way, let me know immediately. This is going to be a two-car tango to try and thwart the assault of Team AGR.
Well, they've got Andretti Green in front of him and Andretti Green Racing behind him. Danica is right behind him in 7th. Take a look. This is the onboard.
Now, watching the low side, the car starts to move up a lane just so close. The right rear tire of Dan Weldon, the 10 machine on your left-hand side, touched the side pod of Scott Dixon's car. Now, for Scott Dixon, this is actually not too bad. If he can keep on the back end of the number 10 of Weldon, what he ends up doing is saving a little bit of fuel, which sometimes is not a bad deal. Remember last year, Marty, he always ran about 2 more laps in this event than everybody else.
While all this is going on, you can see that Weldon has gotten around the 11 of Tony Kanaan, so that takes care of the lead wingman for Dario Franchitti. And here comes the number 9 of Scott Dixon right behind him. There's Danica Patrick taking a look on the outside of Dixon.
+4.
Now, did you hear the movement? You saw the movement of the hands, and also you could hear the throttle getting off of Danica Patrick. So that means she has some work to do in her car right now to get the car to work a little bit better.
Notice what we've added at the top of your screen. Points as of now. We'll bring it in from time to time. And with Franchitti in 3rd, Dixon a little bit further back, the margin is 10th. Tony Kanaan is 44 markers behind. Meanwhile, up front, Sam Hornish Jr. Do you realize this is, he's only led 1 lap. That was back at Michigan since he won at Texas in June. That's before today, and he took the lead here and has held it for all 9 laps so far.
Well, as we said before, it hasn't been a Penske-like year because they certainly haven't had the success that they thought about, especially at the beginning of the season. But watch Weldon here. I mean, this is something we have not seen the last 2 days from Dan Weldon. He seems like he's been running not too bad. Qualified 5th, did not seem to have the speed, but right now he can run up behind cars, he can get past them, and then drive away from them. You can hear Dario Franchitti, who we ride board with right now, sort of working the throttle a little bit on mid-turn, so that means his car is not working perfectly for him. They'll make some changes during pit stops to improve the car, but Dan Weldon, you think about Dan, we saw him preseason testing back in Homestead, just a focused Dan Weldon. He was ready to go and win another championship, win the Indy 500, as he's now starting, he's right along with Dixon. And the situation with Dan Weldon is that he had a lot of bad luck mid-season, Marty. And he seemed like he just wasn't into it. Well, he seems like he's back today.
Take a look. You're on board looking back from Franchitti from 4th place to 5th. That's Scott Dixon behind him. He is the meat in the Chip Ganassi Racing sandwich right now. And going into this season, he said all along this was going to be a very tight points championship race.
I kind of knew it was going to come down to this. I always said, even with the big points lead in the middle of the year, I knew it was going to come down to a fight in Chicago, and it has. So we'll just, it's more, now it's pretty simple. I got to finish ahead of Scott, that'll make things easy, and I've got to keep TK somewhere close, and that's what we'll do. But as close as we run at Chicago, and as fast as we run, and as quickly as things happen, you've got to run your own race though, and just try and get up front and stay up front.
Notice he said keep TK, Tony Kanaan close. Kanaan's not close. He's dropped all the way back to 7th. Danica Patrick's gotten around him. There he is way back there. So Dario is alone right now. He has no support from any AGR teammates. Vince, what's going on?
Well, Scott Goodyear said, according to the what he saw on the onboard cam, that maybe Dario was fighting the car a bit, but there's been no communication from Dario Franchitti to the man that handles his race strategy, John Anderson. The only communication has come from the spotter, Dave Reininger. Dario has said nothing, but they just came on the radio and they said, Dixon behind you, he likes the bottom. So keep an eye on Franchitti, maybe protect that bottom a little bit with Dixon behind him.
It is the shortest way around this 1.5-mile oval. While all this continues, just one quick note, we will keep you posted on what's happening throughout the field. Best mover so far, AJ Foyt the 4th. Started 18th, he's up to 13th. Meanwhile, up front, it is still Sam Hornish with teammate Elio Castroneves 1st and 2nd, Dan Weldon 3rd, Dario Franchitti 4th, Scott Dixon 5th. That's your top 5. We're going to step aside to go side by side with all the drama from the last 2 weeks. And it started right there at Sonoma when the teammates got together, and then we moved on to last week at Detroit. And what else could we see except another controversy late in the race? Just southwest of downtown Chicago, we're at Chicagoland Speedway, and there is Tony Kanaan now 1 lap down. You saw it on side by side. He came in for an unscheduled pit stop. Brianne Pettigo, what's the story?
Marty, I'm looking at the tire right now that was the problem for Tony Kanaan. If you can see, there's a puncture right here in his outside rear tire. It went down, causing him to have to come into the pits. Unfortunately, he is still battling massive understeer. So what that means for Dario Franchitti is when he's looking for his wingmen, he's going to have to turn to Danica Patrick and Marco Andretti.
Danica Patrick now running in 6th, and there you see the tires as they came off of the car, and it's got to be a very lonely feeling right now for Dario Franchitti. He is in 4th. It is Sam Hornish, Elio Castroneves, Dan Weldon, then Dario, and Scott Dixon rounding out your top 5. Danica Patrick is 6th, and that's slow traffic. Looks like it could be Milka Duno. It is, as she gets lapped for the first time today. You can see right now, I mean, Team Penske in control of the race, but this championship is up for grabs. And look out, looked like Marco Andretti and Danica almost came together.
Remember, this is a teammate situation. Sometimes you give and take just a little bit differently for teammates, but Danica right now housing the top side of her, the 2-car of Thomas Scheckter. She seems to be trying to keep down on the bottom side. Scott Sharp is now behind her.
Well, she had to get out of it when Marco came by. He went past. Scheckter went past, so it's going to bump her back to about 7th position. All right, take a look now, and you can see that you've got Hornish, Castroneves, Weldon, and Dixon has gotten around Dario Franchitti. So Dixon into 4th, Dario Franchitti into 5th. And you see what it would do to the points right now at the top of your screen, Jack Arute.
And it was a tough job to make that assault on Dario Franchitti for Scott Dixon. He tried the high side, tried the low side, and all through it, Mike Hull, like a coach, kept telling Scott to be patient. Meanwhile, directly in front of Dixon was his teammate Dan Weldon, Chip Ganassi telling Weldon exactly where Dixon was throughout the course of that assault on Franchitti. Let's check in with Vince Welch.
Well, the Andretti Green Racing team brought the same 4 cars for its 4 drivers that it ran at Kentucky. That's right, even Dario's car, which he flipped at the end of that race. Unfortunately for AGR, Franchitti and Tony Kanaan are experiencing similar issues with the handling of that car. Franchitti has just come over his radio and said, bad understeer. Marty?
All right, thanks for the update, Vince. And so our pole sitter has dropped back to 5th. Let's take a look at the onboard. Let's watch this if we can. You can see the transition in the time frame that we're talking about, but watch his hands here, Scott. See if we can pick it out.
Well, we saw that earlier on. He seems like he's just fighting the car just a bit too much. His right hand will start to go towards the 12 o'clock position, and you can hear the RPMs in the engine just start to grind down just a little bit. Means the car is not free enough. Now, the throttle is usually the telltale. He's being brave. His 100% throttles all the way through, but too much steering angle and droning down the car of the RPMs. They'll look to fix that during the next pit stop to try to free the car up a bit for him.
As you look at the Firestone telemetry next to the bottom, steering, watch this. We noticed if it goes above 30 degrees, that's a good sign that it's got to push, because we didn't see that yesterday on this telemetry when they were handling well.
And we have a lot more cars in the racetrack, so you're going to get a lot more turbulent air from the cars in front, so you probably will end up having a bit more steering in there, but you need that front bite from those front wheels so you don't scrub off the speed, and that's exactly what's happening to him. Now, you can see that he's no longer running behind the cars in front because he does have that understeer. If you run behind the cars in front, it just simply makes the understeer worse.
No reason to panic, though, for Dario Franchitti. We've still got the first round of scheduled pit stops to come. We're only working lap 32 of 200. But if you're Scott Dixon and a fan of Dixon, well, you're liking what you're seeing so far. His wingman, Dan Weldon, is cutting the air in front of him, and he is making tracks, trying to nail down the Team Penske duo of Sam Hornish and Elio Castroneves. Pit stops will be coming up soon. We're going to step aside, give us a chance to catch our breath. You won't miss a thing. Stay with us here at the Peak Antifreeze IndyCar 300, the season finale of the 07 campaign. You're watching ESPN on ABC. All right, we're back. We're cutting into the commercial. You saw it on Side by Side, a wicked crash for Marco Andretti, the 20-year-old.
What happened to some brake? I don't know. So you were on TV, and all of a sudden I just saw the back end swap ends on you. I do not know, but I do not know. Everything we see here looks okay, but it definitely swapped ends awful quick on you.
So Marco's asking if something broke, and they can't tell him.
And that's the reason, because we have the computer age right now, the telemetry, everything from that car is being beamed back to the engineers you see right there, real time. They're watching their laptop computers and watching tire pressure, suspension movements, anything that Marco's doing in the car, throttle application, brake application, steering, and they said we did not see anything. So it certainly says that maybe there was something on the track. Now, if a tire was going down, he would know it by the telemetry information. Now, the right-hand side of your screen, you can actually see the car start to go down on the right rear. So I'm thinking that a suspension piece or something broke, Marty, because it always has already started to teeter-totter. Let's listen. Yeah, there's a collapse of a suspension piece or something of that nature, drops the right rear of the car down. Remember, he's doing 215 miles an hour and shows you how safe these cars are. Now let's watch top of your screen. Goes at and impacts the top of the wall. Now that's the safer barrier up there. The steel and foam energy reduction.
The right rear.
There's a tire going off the 2 car, we are told right now. That's the tire that's going on. Now that's a problem probably from a pit stop or some scenario like that, because the wheel nut obviously has come off. The hub is there.
We'll inspect everything.
Schechter will head for the pits. For Marco, this is the end to what has been a dismal sophomore season. Remember, he was Rookie of the Year last year. This is his 10th DNF, his 6th crash this season. And remember, we're only talking about 17 races, so a really tough break for Marco Andretti. And take a look at the comparisons. I mean, Michael had a tough year. He had 9 DNFs. Marco now goes to 10.
And you remember earlier in the year that Marco just did not have a comfortable car on oval tracks, and a lot of times he got out of the car. And he sort of got through that slump a little bit, and I think he got his mind wrapped around that he's just got to sit in the car and drive through when a car's not handling very well. I think his teammates that have the experience helped him with that. But it's really tough when you've had a great first year, won your first race as a rookie, come back, and you're not really even that competitive at some events throughout the season. So he'll get away from it this winter, regroup, continue training as he has been doing very, very hard, and have the opportunity to come back and regain himself back here next year.
So Thomas Schechter gets a new right rear tire. He goes back out onto the track. Pit lane has been officially open, so we'll see who is going to be a taker. And obviously at lap 37, I would think everybody would be coming. And there you see the safety crew, the Delphi safety crew, working out, checking out Marco and getting the car and the damage taken up. And here comes everybody. It's time for the Ethanol Edge triple pitch. Jack and Root, they're coming your way.
And for Scott Dixon, who is trying to overtake the lead tandem from Team Penske, no changes. Meanwhile, Sam Hornish Jr. will be in the top of the box. Roger Penske calling the shots there. No changes for Dixon. Dixon has a slight bit of understeer, but says he thinks once he gets out front, it'll be fine. What about Dario Franchitti, Vince?
Well, Jack, they're going to, of course, fill it full of ethanol, put on fresh Firestones, and make a turn of front wing in the front. That's Dave Sharpley making the adjustment, and Franchitti, the last one to get out of the first 3 that came in.
So as you can see, some good pit stops. Dixon especially, 6.8 seconds. We can tell you Tony Kanaan stayed out. Now remember, he was a lap down after having to stop early because of that cut tire. So we'll check out everything, see where it all sorts out. It looks like Dario will end up in about the 5th car coming out of the pits. We'll step aside, go side by side here at Chicagoland.
It is raining now here in turn 4. It is starting to come down. It looks like Dario Franchitti will win the 91st Indianapolis 500 as now the skies open up.
Tune up the bagpipes. Dario Franchitti will win at Indianapolis. And the question is, will that career high point be matched with a championship today? Well, it has suffered a setback here at the first round of pit stops because Dario came in 5th, he went out 5th. Scott Dixon came in 4th, came out in 2nd. Let's take a look at Dixon, the big winner.
Pressure's always on the crew members to get everything done. The right rear tire man for Dario Franchitti just caught in the middle of Dixon trying to leave and Franchitti getting the work done with him. Those crew members are always putting themselves on the line out there, Marty, especially when it comes down to a championship run like this.
Take a look at the points now at the top of your screen. Dixon would lead Franchitti by 7 if he holds on to 2nd place, and Franchitti stays in 5th. Tony Kanaan is a distant 3rd. Elio Castroneves is our race leader. Dixon 2nd, Sam Hornish 3rd, Dan Weldon 4th, Dario Franchitti 5th. Let's go back to a little bit earlier. We tapped into Scott Dixon's radio.
Tell us about the car.
Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable. Just sort of cruising along here. Got a bit of understeer, but it seems to be within control. Front seat, you know, I think if we get out front, we're going to be pretty good.
Copy that.
And the voice on the other end is that man right there on the right side of your screen, Mike Hull. And that was right before the pit stop. Jack, you've got more?
Yeah, Mike Hull is coaching his driver and also looking at former races. He just told Scott Dixon this is starting to unfold the way it did in Kansas. What Mike does is looks at all the former races, the readouts. And he told Scott that that means that it's going to be about track position, fellas. It helps when you've got a tactician with more than 4 decades of knowledge sitting on the pit box like Scott Dixon does.
Well, and we saw his move last week. The second to last pit stop at Detroit was brilliant. While we've got a moment, let's talk a little Monday Night Football. It returns to ESPN, kicks off with a doubleheader. First at 7 Eastern, the Ravens head into Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. Then at 10:15 Eastern, it's the Cardinals looking to move the chains against the 49ers. Don't miss the return of Monday Night Football on ESPN tomorrow night as we get ready to go green. Down the backstretch, Dixon's under attack for second place by Sam Hornish, and Hornish gets around. There's Frank Keedy, and he looks like he's got his hands full. He has dropped back to 6th as he got passed by Scott Sharp.
If you've made any changes on the car during this last pit stop, it takes a lap or 2 to feel them out. Remember, they're back out there with ethanol fuel, a full tank, and 4 fresh Firestone Firehawk tires. So in this situation, you have to wait for a couple of laps for the tire pressures to come up, the temperatures to come up, so the car will start to settle itself down. I laughed about the situation. We heard Dixon on the radio, Marty, because he said, you know, Michael asked him, how's the car? And, well, I'm okay. I'm just out here cruising around at 215 miles an hour.
On board with Dario Franchitti. Remember the reports early, Dario liked the low line of the track. He's being forced to take the high side.
And here's a situation right now where he's able to keep his foot on the throttle on the high side and look like Scott Sharp, the green machine on the bottom, the number 8, was not able to do that. Now, you can see that Sharp was working a little bit better in this turn in 3 and 4. Franchitti works a little bit better in 1 and 2. It's a bit of a compromise how you set the car up, and they don't work the same on both ends. The turns, yes, are banked at 18 degrees. They look similar, but because of the wind, everything of that nature, it does change the handling of the car at both ends of the racetrack.
So you can see what's going on as you see Frank Keedy now setting sights on Dan Weldon as he is currently into 5th. And while we're watching this on the onboard, let's get an update on Marco Andretti's condition from Brianne Pedigo.
Marty, they have taken Marco Andretti to the hospital. Upon reaching the infield care center, he was complaining of a hurting neck. They took him there to get an x-ray. The good news, he never lost consciousness. He's awake and alert. They just want to make sure that everything is okay for him.
All right, we'll get an update if we get further word before the end of the race today here at Chicagoland. Meanwhile, out on the track, the battle continues as Team Penske is trying to pull away, but they can't from Target Chip Ganassi Racing teammates. Scott Dixon in 3rd, Dan Weldon in 4th. Let's get a little more on the update of Team Ganassi's tactics. Jack?
Well, we may have a little prospecting going on, guys, and the prospector may be Dan Weldon. You see Weldon on the high side of the racetrack. They have sent the gentleman Englishman to the high side to see what clean air will do to the Target Chip Ganassi car. They have told Scott Dixon where they have dispatched their teammate, and they are going to run flank to flank like that, not to block Dario Franchitti, but to try and be proactive in determining where the best groove is. Vince Welch.
Well, in Jackaroo, it's not working out from a teammate perspective for Dario Franchitti. Remember, Franchitti came in with the 3 teammates, and there's been so much talk on how those 3 might be able to help Dario today. But Tony Kanaan went out with a punctured right rear. He's a lap down, had to stay out to get his lap back, and Marco Andretti has already crashed. Danica hasn't been able to get up into the mix to give Dario any help. So right now, it's Dario that is the lone soldier for AGR.
Well, and you mentioned Tony Kanaan. He has fought his way back to the lead lap, as you mentioned, Vince, but he's got himself into 15th position right now. He's about 4 seconds behind the lead pack. Danica is in 8th, and you see Dario in 5th. So, right, you are, as far as the team support, Dario is alone.
Well, these guys are worried about the championship. There's really a race going on here for the guys that are up front. We talked about Castor, Nevis, and Hornish. Only have won 1 event each so far this year, something that's not very, as we mentioned, Penske-like. Well, right now there's a race out there for the championship contenders, and there's also a race out there for drivers who have not won this year or drivers who really want to add more to their win column this year, like the 2 Penske cars. They're not really going to be too concerned about the guys behind them if they need to get past for 1 position to maybe win a championship. They're out there just to win for themselves and the team.
And you get guys that are auditioning potentially for new seats next year or just trying to hold on to the seat that they've got. That's something to think about as well. And as we get ready to move move aside. We'll tell you that we'll be back after this word from our ABC stations. It's Castroneves and Hornish running in front of Dixon and Weldon with Franchitti fifth.
Elio Castroneves, the leader. Very strange. Now they'll be lucky to finish with a single car in the top 10. Oh, and Elio crashes again. I'm fine. I'll give it to him. He's going to need some cool down time as he walks back to the pit lane and very hot.
It has been a rough year for Team Penske. One victory for each of Elio Castroneves and Sam Hornish, but right now they are running first and second here at a track that Team Penske, with Roger Penske on the right of your screen, they've never won at Chicagoland.
And Marty, that's only 3 tracks on the whole complete schedule they've never won. Chicago, as you mentioned, Sonoma and Watkins Glen, because they have had 2 of the best drivers in the series running so competitively in both road courses and ovals. So interesting to see how they will finish up here today.
Now, before the phones start lighting up, all you guys that follow Panther Racing from years ago will remember that, yes, Sam did win here twice, but that was with Panther Racing, not with Team Penske. So that's the significance of that statistic. So we take a look at Team Penske at Chicago. You can see exactly how they've done second and third, their best finishes here at Chicagoland. Right now, they're in lockstep with Scott Dixon, Dan Weldon behind. And as we went away, Danica Patrick was able to get around Scott Sharp. So guess what? Dario Franchitti finally has some team support, and there she is.
Looks like her car is running very well for her after that pit stop. It takes a couple of laps, as we mentioned, to read the changes on the car. A little bit of breathe on the throttle right there as just car started to move up the racetrack. She's getting back in behind Dario to take advantage of that draft. Also saves just a little bit of fuel mileage for her at the same time. But now she's up behind the leaders. She'll have to sort of tiptoe and read to see what her car will do in the turbulent air of the traffic that's up in front of her.
All right, Brienne, you've caught up with Michael Andretti.
That's right, Marty. I'm with Michael. I just informed him of Marco's trip to the hospital. The good news is he's okay, just getting checked out. How do you split your mind right now, worrying about your son and being a concerned car owner at the same time?
Well, I mean, the word was when he, stopped, he said that he felt, that he was okay when they asked him, so I thought everything was okay, but hopefully it's just for precautionary reasons that they're taking him there, and, not a lot I could do with that except for, right now all I could do is just sit here and watch what's going on and hope Dario gets it done.
Well, the good news, Danica just got back up there to help Dario a little bit. What's the strategy going on right now?
No strategy. I mean, strategy is we have to finish in front of Dixon at the end, and that's what we're going to try to do.
Guys?
All right, thanks, Brienne. One of the things I'm noticing, take a look at how this formation sets up. Look at that, coming through the corners. They get in single file down the straightaway right there, and then every other car sort of slides to the higher line, which in essence forces, if you're going to make a pass, you're going to have to go 3 high, and that isn't going to get it.
Well, they're sort of staggered like that to get some clean air across the wings.
Body off, and they're not going very quick. They are doing 2:07.
And that's coming from Kim Green, passing along to Danica Patrick. The speed of the 2 cars are up in front, just a back straightaway length ahead of them, which is somewhere around 2,400 feet in distance. Now these guys are running 214, 215, this lead group, in the group that they talked about, running 204, 205 miles an hour. You talked about running staggered. If you ride along board on the Firestone telemetry with Danica Patrick, watch her throttle. She starts to go through the turns, up and down the throttle, working the car. And the reason she's doing that is because the car is giving her some signals, sensing to her that she's not very happy with it. So she eases off the throttle just a minute to get the front end possibly back underneath her. Again, you can hear her working the throttle. The steering is working also. Now this is where she should be able to take advantage of the draft up in front. Watch the RPMs.
One of the things that I was noticing was the steering. Remember we had Dario when he was complaining of the severe push. It was like 34, 35 degrees. She's well under 30 degrees in her steering input. Let's get more from Vince Welch.
There's been so much said about Danica Patrick and the fact that she has not got that much sought after victory this season with Andretti Green. But they believe that she has actually become a much better driver in this year, even though the win has been elusive. She's completed 92% of the laps this season. That's a higher percentage than Elio, Tony Kanaan, Dan Weldon, Sam Hornish, and her teammate Marco Andretti. She hasn't gotten that first win yet, but she's headed in the right direction, and this team believes it's only a matter of time because she does get better each time out.
leader in that category. As you see Tony Kanaan being forced to pit, he's got to stop because he's out of fuel if he keeps going much longer. The leader in laps led, or laps completed, I should say, Scott Sharp, as he's completed all but 22 laps this year. Kanaan's stop only 8 seconds, but it probably is going to put him a lap down again as here comes everybody by. And so that great strategy didn't pay off for him, as he needed a yellow and didn't get it. Meanwhile, it is Castroneves and Hornish in lockstep, and they have opened up a bit of a gap over third place Scott Dixon, about 0.3 of a second. Fourth is Dan Weldon. Dario Franchitti and Danica Patrick run 5th and 6th. And we hear that Darren Manning's car is being taken back to the garage area, so unfortunately a tough end to the season for the number 14, as Darren Manning and the A.J. Foyt entry will take it behind the wall. His best was a 4th back at Detroit just a week ago. He had a 5th place finish at Iowa, but will not get the finish here. He started 8th today. All right, with 73 laps down of 200, we haven't even hit the halfway mark. We're going to step aside. Scott Dixon, the man right now who would claim the championship if it ended, but it's not over yet. Back here at Chicagoland, as Elio Castroneves continues to lead here. It's the first race he's led on an oval since Iowa. And if you remember last week, the big news, of course, Elio will be Dancing with the Stars on ABC this fall. Earlier today, his partner, Julianne Hough, was here at the racetrack. In fact, she got the chance to go for a ride in the 2-seater here at the 1.5 mile over. And there you see Julianne getting all suited up and climbing into the car. And Brianne Pettigo, you've caught up with her. What was the experience like?
Marty, we're just about to find out. I can't believe I've been replaced. I got to dance a little with Elio last week, but the official partner here, Julianne Hough. What do you think of what your partner, Elio Castroneves, does for a living? You got a taste of it this morning.
It's incredible, so dangerous. I mean, I had a little bit of a taste today when I got to ride in the 2-seater, and it was incredible. I wanted to do it again. It's so exhilarating, and I was going only 175, and they're going up to 215 today, and so I'm just completely in awe. It's incredible.
Well, Marty Scott, she was the champion last year, so you know the pressure's on Elio.
Yeah, I told her, I asked her, I said, if he does poorly, can I substitute for him? And after 30 seconds of hysterical laughter, she said no.
And you were surprised?
No, not in the least.
You know, we talked to Elio this morning about the Dancing with the Stars, and he said, I'm glad that I'm finished the racing season today. It's because it's going to take a lot of effort, a lot of concentration. And he said, I'm just a little bit nervous. He said, I've got a champion that I'm dancing with. And I said, well, she's also dancing with the champion. You're a champion in Indianapolis 2 times in a row. And he went, yeah, you're right. Maybe we'll try and win this Dancing with the Stars.
Back to the race at hand. Jackaroo, what's going on in Elio's camp?
Well, no problems with Elio Castroneves' car. I just talked to Tim Cindric, who calls the shots. Said there may be just a tiny bit of an understeer, but not anything to be concerned with. Meanwhile, his teammate, who is now playing wingman, Sam Hornish Jr., I checked with Roger Penske, they like their car as well. Look for pit stops around 4 laps from now. Fellas, if it's under green and it looks like we've got the Penske cars peeling off first, this will be wild.
So on lap 85, the 2 leading cars from Team Penske are going to come in because they want that freight train when they go back out.
And I'm very surprised both of them are coming in at the same time because they are pitted next to each other in the pit lane. Usually you try to stagger this, bring in one at one point in time, the other the following lap, but not today.
But it is something that they have practiced over and over again. They do what's called a wide entrance. You saw it right there. The crews will now go to 22 gallons. Firestone Firehawks, no changes on either car. And now it's a drag race. And did you see the one crew member pull the rear tire out of the way so teammate could get acceleration out of his box?
And Jack, that's a great point because we did not see that in the previous stop between Franchitti and Dixon, opposite teams and running for the championship. We pointed out before that Franchitti's right rear tire man left the tires sitting there just to make it a little bit more difficult for Dixon to depart.
And you see our new race leader, Scott Dixon. And here is Dan Weldon as he has peeled off. So Dixon has lost his wingman. Dixon getting great fuel mileage again. Dixon has to stop earlier. Let's send it down pit side.
60 miles an hour. Barry Wanzer is calling the shots for Dan Weldon. Let's listen in. little bit of a problem on the left front. Because they had not completed their fuel. Now here's what this will mean, fellas. Scott Dixon has logged one additional lap, and he'll have clear sailing, a narrow entrance onto his pit stall that's directly in front of his teammates. Here comes the Kiwi. Having already experienced a championship, this is a team that is well versed. They've been together for more than 2 years, and now on the fuel, green flag stop number 2 completed.
So Dario Franchitti still out there. He takes over the race lead, so he will lead a lap. Here on lap number 90, and we'll wait to see if he pulls down to come in this time. No, it looks like he's going to go at least one more. So he is getting some excellent fuel mileage on the ethanol, but...
Okay, push it up. You're going to pit this lap. Pit this lap.
There you hear the call. John Anderson said you're going to pit this lap. This could be significant later in the race.
Well, in-laps and out-laps are so important. His last time around, 216 miles an hour, 216.4, the fastest race so far in the fastest lap so far in this race.
You saw Team Penske get around Scott Dixon. Dixon on cold tires could not keep up. Well, remember, the Team Penske cars came in 1 lap earlier. Here on lap 91, here comes Dario Franchitti.
Quick entry with a clean run in. Right down the middle on this one.
Let's send it to Vince Welch.
John Anderson telling Dario, you've got a clean entry into the pits. Make sure you hit your marks. Of course, the Firestones and the fuel, even though he's the ethanol fuel, even though he's complaining a bit of an understeer, there will not be a wing adjustment made. And on the fuel, handling the fuel responsibilities is Corey McLeish. There you see, still filling it to the top. And John Anderson said, come on, Corey, let's go. They get him out.
And there you see the race leaders. Now, can he get up to speed quickly enough to hold off the Team Penske freight train that is barreling down turn 2 right now?
No chance.
Not a way.
And he hopes that he can get up to speed quick enough to get in the draft behind the 4 cars that are up front. He'll go to the right-hand side, try to suck along behind the... Look at this. That's a full tank of fuel, and he had a great last lap, a great in-lap, so that's just what's tough about it.
So we'll see if he can reel back in the top 4, but after cycling through the pit stops, it's Elio, Sam, then Scott Dixon and Dan Weldon, 3rd and 4th, Dario Franchitti back in 5th spot. And unlike NASCAR, no bonus points for leading a lap, only for leading the most laps. And right now, that is up to Team Penske to decide. So those 3 points may not play in the championship chase today. We're going to step aside, go side by side. Elio Castroneves, does he pick up win number 2 and maybe play the role of spoiler? Back here at Chicagoland Speedway, that was Koski Matsura getting passed by the 4 leaders. It's Elio Castroneves in front of Sam Hornish, Scott Dixon, and Dan Weldon. Let's go back, take a look at the Mr. Clean pass of the race so far today.
Situation right here. Both the Penske cars are going to come around here, and you're going to end up seeing on the apron Dario Franchitti, excuse me.
Franchitti was trying to come around and get out in time, and that was also where they got around Scott Dixon as well, because Dixon had pitted earlier. And Sam Hornish, while we were showing you that, has managed to get around Elio Castroneves. Let's take you back, and maybe we'll make this the second Mr. Clean pass of the race. How about that?
Well, this is the one that probably should count on being on the racetrack. A nice draft going down the backstretch. Sam Hornish taking advantage of the draft and making a clean move. No resistance by Elio Castroneves because of the teammate situation. Remember, Sam won here back in 02 and 03 aboard the Panther machine. He knows how to get the job done here in Chicago.
Well, we've just passed the halfway mark in 3 of the previous 6 races. The man who led it halfway here at Chicagoland has gone on to win the race. That was Elio Castroneves. He's lost that lead. Let's find out what's going on in Team Penske's cab. Jaggeroo.
Well, 1 lap before Sam Hornish made that move to take the lead, during some lap traffic, his car started to wash out as he tried to follow his teammate underneath the number 55 of Kosuke Matsura. But when the car washed out, Sam Hornish discovered that there was a little more grip upstairs than he thought. That pass, as you saw, enabled him to start on the high side and then kind of diamond the racetrack. I asked Rick Mears about Sam Hornish and said that's one of the moves that Sam Hornish patented. And then he laughed and he said, well, I guess not, because Scott, as you and I know, he's the one, Rick Mears, that has the patent for the high side move.
Well, he's a driver that had so much understanding of oval tracks and the setup for that. And I asked Sam Hornish one time, he said, I just continue to learn from Rick Mears all the time. Rick Mears is an advisor on the Team Penske camp, helps the drivers, working with their lines and the setups, and really just coaches them along and has done just a great job.
That was Marty Roth in the 25. You saw the 4 leaders get around very easily as they were coming around on lap number 106. You see the points right now, top of your screen. If it ends, Dixon by 2 over Dario Franchitti. Tony Kanaan, as we told you, he is a lap down, and for all intents and purposes, he's basically toast. And if you're wondering what happens if there is a tie, well, we can tell you it breaks down to the most wins in a single season. And if that were to be the case, right now that would go to Scott Dixon, because Dixon has 4 wins this season compared to 3 for Dario Franchitti. Man with the most wins is Tony Kanaan. He's got 5, but as you said, he's just too far back in the points championship chase right now. And there is Tony, as you can see, he is running now in 8th position as he's well back. We're going to step aside for a while. We'll be back after this word from our ABC stations. Still got a long way to go in this one. The championship yet to be decided here at Chicagoland. You're watching ESPN on ABC. The Peak Antifreeze IndyCar 300, presented by Mr. Clean, brought to you by Peak Antifreeze. When you peak, you win. GoDaddy.com, world's #1.com provider. Make your name with us. And McDonald's. And as you take a look at the Chicago skyline, we're at Chicagoland Speedway, southwest of the Windy City, as we are in Joliet, and we're running lap number 115 of 200, and it is Sam Hornish in front of Elio Castroneves, Scott Dixon, Dan Weldon, and Dario Franchitti is a distant 5th right now. Let's talk a little bit about Sam Hornish, because could this be his last IndyCar race? Of course, he'll be running about 5 NASCAR races at the conclusion of this event. And you take a look at his first win. It was back in Phoenix in 2001. He was running for Panther Racing at the time, and his first championship was that same year.
Just a very strong competitor, and now he's learned to drive on road courses, something that nobody thought that he'd be able to do. But Sam is such a talented driver and such a competitor that he was able to make road courses very competitive for himself this year. You can see he won the Indianapolis 500, then his 3rd IndyCar championship with Team Penske. He gave a championship to Penske, something that Penske had not had here in the IRL, and Penske gave the Indy 500 ring to Sam, something that Sam wanted so dearly.
Well, again, off sequence, you saw Tony Kanaan coming back out of pit lane. This will put him another lap down, or a lap down. He had gotten back on the lead lap as everybody cycled through, but again, he needs a caution to come out when he gets back on that lead lap. It hasn't happened. You see the points right there, and let's get an update on Tony Kanaan's situation from Vince Welch.
Well, Marty, as you mentioned, he has been fighting from a lap down since early in the race when he punctured a right rear tire, but the car is running well. They're happy with the way the race car is, and because of their off sequence, their position on the board doesn't look too impressive. But Tony Kanaan not unhappy with the way the race car is handling. They did not make any chassis adjustments on that last stop, so if things fell right for him, he might be in position, but certainly not at this point.
Well, the other thing that has to happen is the other 2 points contenders have to basically finish like 15th, 16th, and on down, and it just doesn't look like that's going to happen right now. So let's take a look at Dario Franchitti as he is in traffic now. Got his hands full trying to maintain contact. You're on board with him.
Well, he certainly has picked up the pace in the last 4 or 5 laps, because previous to this, he was probably about 1.5 seconds to 2 seconds behind. But now the cars are starting to run into a little bit of traffic. Dario's been able to take advantage of that. We'll see how quickly he can get around the top side, the number 4 Delphi machine of Vitor Meira.
Let's get more on Dario's situation, Vince.
Well, and the lap traffic was exactly what Dario Franchitti wanted to see, because that slows down the drivers in front of him and has enabled Dario to close the gap on the target cars in front of him. And the spotter, Dave Renninger, was telling him, okay, the leaders are coming up on lap traffic. Now's when you've got to close the gap, Dario, urging him from up atop the grandstand, as he's got the bird's eye view of the challenge that Dario faces ahead of him.
Saw the stats there on the lap and the speed for Dario Franchitti as he has gotten back into contact with the top 4 cars. He's running in 5th.
Well, he's in contact, as you mentioned, Marty, but right now, if he's got a car that's capable of getting up there, we're going to have to wait and see, because the 4 cars in front are punching a hole in the air for him. He should be able to take advantage of that and start to get closer to the group in front, but I don't really see that as of yet. He just can't make that impression. So has he got a better car than maybe he's showing his hand right now? Is this a bit of his strategy to sit back? Remember, still got a long ways to go in this race.
Well, and you were with us just a few moments ago. We showed you Sam's career. Is this his last IndyCar race? We talked to him about what the future may hold.
As far as the possibility of it being my last IndyCar race, I feel at this point in time there's a 100% chance that it will not be my last IndyCar race. That I think that no matter what I do in the future, that I'll always want to run IndyCar races, and hopefully I'll be given that opportunity.
So we'll see what happens in those 5 NASCAR events that he has upcoming after the season concludes today. Right now, he's just thinking about one thing: capping off 2007 with his 2nd win of the year, and I don't think either one of us would have said only his 2nd possible win.
And that's very strange for us. We talked about with Penske cars, because they've been competitive, but maybe a little bit of bad luck. And Sam, just this past week after the Detroit race, went over to Milwaukee and tested in a Cup car just to get a bit more experience. Remember, he actually bent his thumb back at Detroit, so he's been driving at that Cup test and here this weekend with a brace on his left hand because he did some damage to his thumb in that crash at Detroit.
And the one good thing is, this is not a road course race where you're shifting 37 times a lap. We're going to step aside. Here you see the top 5 and the championship still at stake at Chicagoland after 126 laps.
Back here at Chicagoland, the leaders will pit. Team Penske comes in tandem as they did the previous pit stop. The crews will go to work as we watch Sam Hornish's crew work. They have filled the fuel. You can see it takes a couple of extra seconds, and both in sync the way they came in will exit. The first of the leaders to pit again under green, guys.
And we can tell you that the most laps led will be decided between those two. It cannot possibly mathematically go to either Scott Dixon or Dario Franchitti. Dixon is leading right now, and Dan Weldon is 2nd with Dario 3rd. Danica Patrick now 4th. Scott Sharp is up to 5th with Ryan Hunter-Ray in 6th. But as you can see, those cars are still going to have to make their next round of pit stops as well. You could see at the top of the screen, if the race ended, what the margins would be. But as we said, that's going to change once everybody cycles through again. We've only had 1 caution at this point. That was back at lap 36 when Marco Andretti apparently had something snap on the car and he hit the wall hard. We have not yet had an update from the hospital. And I think I just heard him say down to 2 before they stopped.
Probably 2 laps before coming in. Just a little bit of information for you to make sure that you're running as hard and fast as you possibly can. When the cars are going to pit, you'll see them come down the back stretch, drop their left side wheels across the white line, signaling to the other cars on track that you are coming into the pit lane this time. That's so you don't end up driving into the driver as he's starting to slow down going into turn 3.
Heard on the radio the call. Dixon last pitted on lap 89. There you see Weldon dropping the wheels. So again, Weldon stops before Scott Dixon. Same thing that happened last time and last year.
And the way that I'm calculating things, I'm not sure if they're all filling completely to the top with fuel or not, because I'm sort of adding up here thinking they did get about another 8 laps on a tank full of ethanol fuel. But
let's send it down trackside, Jack.
No surprise, Dan Weldon will be the first of the Target Chip Ganassi cars to pit. He did this the last sequence as well. We'll check as he's being vectored in by Barry Wanzer. Will they get a full tank of fuel in? We watch the fueler. And yes, I'll tell you what, that looks to me like a full 22 gallons. Meanwhile, it is now Scott Dixon's turn. His crew will go to work, led by Mike Hull, who will be the chief tactician and call the end of the stop.
Okay, let's come in.
And Vitor Meira has crashed, bringing out the yellow right in the middle of these sequences. Danica Patrick is pitting right now. She will be able to make her stop. She was in pit lane. Of course, Scott Dixon will get to finish his stop.
And Scotty, and guys, that is a distinct advantage for Scott Dixon, because he had already initiated his pit stop. There's no penalty. You're already on pit road. He didn't feel the sense of urgency that, let's say, he would have if it had been a green flag stop. the way his teammate Dan Weldon had to endure one lap before that.
Dario Franchitti is your race leader. And there you see Dixon going by. Meanwhile, the Delphi safety team checking on Vitor Mira. And I'm trying to figure out why Dixon would be allowed to go past the race leader under yellow.
Oh, probably because he met the blend line leaving the pit lane. When you're underneath a yellow caution period, if you get to the blend line in pit lane before the driver gets the blend line on the racetrack, then you would have the opportunity to reclaim your position, but the IRL will let us know.
Well, and it's going to be interesting to figure out now as we're under our second caution here on lap 138, as Dario Franchitti is shown as the only car on the lead lap. Everybody else one lap down. Now, Dario still has to make his stop, which then puts all those cars right back on the lead lap.
And the pits will now be closed until the pace car has all the cars behind them in what they call the pack-up, and then the pits will be open, which will allow Dario to come in. Now, if he's going to run out of fuel, for instance, there is a rule in the rule book that allows him to come into pit lane when the pits are closed, put a little bit of fuel in the car so he's not going to run out on the racetrack, go back and rejoin the group on track, but then he does have to make a complete and official stop once the pits lane is opened up. But he did pit later than all the rest previously, so he should have enough fuel on board. He last pitted lap 92, so I was calculating he was going to get to lap 142 under green anyhow. We're now lap 139 under yellow.
There are 15 cars between the race leader, Dario Franchitti, right now, and Scott Dixon. Well, obviously, Dario's still got to make his stop, but it's going to be interesting to see how that cycles through with the wave by. Let's take another look at what happened to Vitor Mira that brought out this second caution.
Now, Vitor, who qualified 15th, this seemed like the car has gone backwards right in the middle of the turn where the G-loading is the most. And you can see quite a lot of damage. Scott Sharp just does a great move and escapes getting hit by Vitor, which is coming down on the racetrack. Now, Vitor is one of many drivers that has been engaged in getting married in the off-season to Adriana, along with Scott Dixon and Elio, both got engaged in getting married. So a busy off-season for some of these guys.
It's his 6th DNF of the season, 3rd crash of the year. As you see, the only taker now is the only guy that needed to stop. The only guy on the lead lap right now is Dario Franchitti, but again, he'll cycle back in, and then we'll wait to see what happens on the wave by and who ends up should be Scott Dixon, who is 15 cars behind. Vince?
See Dave Sharpley there on his knees to change the outside front tire as Dario Franchitti comes in. There will be no chassis adjustments to this car. Dario 12th in this race last time he ran here in 2005, but he did not run this race last year. Remember, he'd had that scooter bike incident and had a back injury, so he was unable to run in this event a year ago. So his best finish being 12th. Hasn't really had much luck in his 2 runs here, but having a pretty solid day today. The car is getting better.
And this was a tough break too, because remember, he was getting better fuel economy than everybody else. Both sets of pit stops under green. He would have had to take on less fuel had we stayed green on that final stop. But now that's basically gone for naught. We'll sort everything out once they get the wave by passed, as we're under our second caution here at Chicagoland. The championship definitely still up for grabs in the IndyCar Series in 2007. Back here at Chicagoland Speedway at the Peak Antifreeze Indy 300, the season finale. And right now, Scott Dixon and Dario Franchitti are shown first and second, with Danica Patrick third. Now, they have yet to do the wave by. There you saw Dixon and Milka Duno, who is several laps down. And there is Dario Franchitti. So until they make the wave by our stats, we figure that 8 cars will be on the official lead lap once they do that. And as you can see, the Delphi safety crew is working up in turn number 4 as the damage to the safer barrier is requiring the welding unit to come out to do a little bit of repairs after Vitor Mira's contact. And there you get the view from exactly what is happening. While all this is going on, I'm flashing back to the Indy Pro Series race that was held here earlier today, wondering if we're going to have the same kind of finish. The margin of victory, guys, we won't spoil it by telling you who won because we want you to watch it on ESPN2. but 5/10,000ths of a second.
We'll take the finish, but we won't take some of the other things that went on in the series, which was some drivers getting airborne, as Dario Franchitti has done in previous races.
Yes.
So we're hoping that's not the case for us here in the IndyCar series.
All right, let's check in with Brianne Pettigo. She's caught up with Vitor Meira.
Marty, at times it was a frustrating season for Vitor Meira, and it has come to an end here at the Care Center. Vitor, tell us what happened out there.
I mean, we on that pit stop we did new tires, did a full tank of fuel, and took some front wing out. As soon as I left, something broke or came undone. I don't know. It's too soon to say, but it's just been a tough and long year to the Delphi crew, driver, car, and I'm ready to move forward to next year.
Well, the good news is he is okay. Jackaroo?
Brianne, we are starting to see things unfold proactively down here in the Target Chip Ganassi pit for Scott Dixon. As we've said, Mike Hull is the tactician for this team, and if Mike has been surveying everything.
There, and let us know.
What he's talking about is he's asked Packy Wheeler to let him know when the repairs to the racetrack have been completed, and there is a reason, fellas. They have been trying to make fuel throughout the course of this pit stop, and
Does that help us? I don't want to leave.
here's what they're trying to do, fellas, and you actually got to listen in on the strategy. They are trying to decide whether to top off before they go back to green so that they can go the distance without another stop. That's the type of thinking that wins you championships.
Well,
but if you roll it the wrong way, you also know it can lose you a championship.
Well, here's the flip side of that equation. If you stay out and you have enough yellow because of the work going on the safer barrier, you might inherit the lead, and you might have enough that way,
And
too.
I think that might be the situation for Dario Franchitti, who last pitted on lap 140. If you're getting almost 50 laps per tank full, it takes you to lap 190, and this yellow, I think, will take you to the end. Now, Dixon, he pitted on lap 136, so maybe Dario doesn't need to, maybe Dixon has to. We all have to just watch.
54 laps remaining. We're under our second caution as a result of Vitor Meira's crash. We'll be back after this word from our ABC stations. The strategy continues to unfold.
Your championship contenders have taken advantage of this extended caution period to top off their 22-gallon fuel cells. And that means that they are going to roll the dice, at least for the time being, in terms of not making another visit on pit road. Let's check in with Vince Welch.
Well, and Jack, as Scott Dixon was ahead of Dario Franchitti on the track, and there you see them both in the picture frame. As soon as Dixon pulled off, Franchitti's crew made the same call. They want these two to be as close to one another on the track in a similar situation as they can from a fuel strategy perspective. There you see Dave Seifert. He's the fuel data engineer for Dario Franchitti, checking to see exactly how much fuel they got in the car and to make sure that they do indeed have enough to get to the end. They were very close before coming in to make this stop, so they should be able to get to the end under green flag conditions with no problem.
And we see some other cars taking advantage of this. They're further back in the field, not in the championship mix. And we're finally getting ready for the wave by all those cars until they get back to the leader, which will be right there, Scott Dixon. And by our count, it should be Danica Patrick, Sam Hornish, Elio Castroneves, Dan Weldon, Tony Kanaan, and Scott Sharp. They will end up on the tail end of the lead lap, and there they go. So that will mean you're riding on board with Danica Patrick. She's riding third in this race right now as she comes around on the wave by. Brianne, let's get an update.
Marty, I spoke with Kim Green. Danica Patrick has been battling a problem with her rev limiter the entire race. The issue is that the hard limiter on the rev limiter is extremely sensitive, so they aren't able to run the engine as much as they'd like to get the RPMs up as high as they could because the hard limiter is going off. That's the issue they're battling right now. Aside from that, Kim Green tells me that the car is good. She's happy. They've just been waiting for this wave around they're getting right now.
And by our count, there will be 2 lapped vehicles between, well, actually now I'm thinking maybe as many as 4 lap vehicles between second place and third place, Danica Patrick. So that's what we're looking at right now. And there you can see them coming through as they finally get caught back up. While we've got a moment, let's talk about Saturday on ABC. Because Pete Carroll's Mighty Trojans face a dangerous early season test on the road. They take on Big 12 power Nebraska. It's Saturday Night Football presented by Southwest Airlines. USC versus Nebraska. Saturday, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific on ABC and ABC HD. All right, let's take a look, and you'll see where 3rd, 4th, and 5th are located with the courtesy of our pointers. It's Danica Patrick, Sam Hornish, and Elio Castroneves. Dan Weldon is 6th, Tony Kanaan 7th, Scott Sharp rounds out the top 8 cars that are on the lead lap.
Now, Danica Patrick's task will be able to get past the traffic that's in front of her and get up behind Dario Franchitti, her teammate, to see if she can give any assistance whatsoever to Dario to help him get by Scott Dixon.
Now, you notice that one car, the 76 of P.J. Chesson, that was his move, and so is Marty Roth. They have taken the option. They are allowed to back up, and there you are on board. As you can see with PJ, they have that option. They can pull back. They don't want to get in the way of this championship mix. Good sporting move, as both of those cars are several laps down.
It allows all the contenders for the race win and the championship situation to play out amongst themselves. Something that I'd love to see. Get those lap cars out of the middle of the event.
And as you see, Dixon in front of Franchitti as we come through 3 and 4. Points as of right now. Dixon would win the championship if he can hold off these last 49 laps. Here we go. We're back to green flag at Chicagoland. That's Danica Patrick high on the high side, trying to get up there to help her teammate. She gets around, and now we're going to try 3 wide down the backstretch. That is Hideki Muto, the rookie, came up from the Indy Pro Series, a 2-time winner there. He was the sandwich in that 3 wide. He is running in 11th spot, 1 lap down. Meanwhile, the championship battle continues up front with Dixon and Franchitti 1st and 2nd. Danica Patrick 3rd. She's got 1 more car to get around. That's Ryan Hunter-Reay. He is shown in 9th position, and she's going to go to the high side to try and get the job done.
Now Ryan knows that he doesn't have a shot at winning this race, and hopefully he'll make some space for her to get through so he's not affecting the outcome of what's happening in front of him.
So far, he's hugging the low line. He's going to force her to go the high side.
Hey, she's going to be looking on your outside again. Let's keep that low line right in the entry to the corner. Look at Scar on your inside now. Elio's on your inside, 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 and keep your line inside, inside. You're clear.
And the big winner was Elio Castroneves. Ryan, as you saw, moved up. Elio ducked underneath. Takes the positions. I'm sorry, it was Sam Hornish in the 6 car. On board with Dixon as we got a lot of slicing and dicing going on right now. That's Danica in 4th. She finally gets around Ryan Hunter-Reay. Dan Weldon right behind her. Meanwhile, up front, it is Dixon, Franchitti, and Hornish. .44 laps remaining in this championship season. Here comes Danica trying to go to the high side again.
And Hornish certainly has a fast car. It looks like Danica is fast also. Franchitti himself just does not seem to have the speed after that first pit stop like he had at the very beginning of the event. Remember, he was the pole sitter, and I'm sort of wondering why he's opening up the bottom side, allowing cars to get on the low side. See how he runs the middle lane? I don't think he's comfortable or can make his car run on the bottom side, Marty.
And here comes Danica. You heard Kim Green saying, let's help Dario. And look at Weldon on the high side trying to get around to help his teammate, Scott Dixon. And Dario is going backwards. Danica goes around. She has no choice.
Well, she was also forced there. Remember, her spotter would tell her the 10 car is on the high side of her. So it cost her positions because she got down on the apron of the racetrack.
And it has cost her dearly. She's lost 2 spots. Weldon gets around, and so does Elio Castroneves. And here comes teammate Dario Franchitti back. She'll have to get the momentum back up to speed again, try and track him down. She definitely has a good race car.
Now is Dario going to be able to make some adjustments inside his cockpit? Remember, you can work with weight jackers and roll bar adjustments inside the car to change the car mechanically to make it better and maybe that's something he's doing now. Remember, Marty, a few segments ago, we did not have a situation where he was that strong at the beginning, but his car got better as the run went on.
Meanwhile, Sam Hornish continues up front. It is the Target Chip Ganassi cars in lockstep in second and third. The championship still up for grabs, but right now Dixon's in a better position. Stay with us. We're going side by side.
And Unser Jr. and Hornets go to the line side by side. Boy, it was amazingly close. Closest finish was here last year. Will it be closer this year? 3 wide at the line, and it's Hornets.
Chicago breeds close finishes, and they are going to make it yet another one.
If you can find better racing, please let me know.
In the past 5 years, the margin of victory here at Chicagoland has never been more than 1/10 of a second, and it looks like it's going to be that way again. Let's get you caught up to speed as we've got one heck of a freight train hauling the mail down the backstretch. Jaggeroot, you're up.
Well, Sam Hornish Jr. has been to victory lane at Chicagoland before, but it was in a yellow liveried car. He would like to deliver to Roger Penske his first Penske victory ever. For Sam Hornish right now, it is clear sailing, but directly behind him, far more important to the second place man is a championship. In a $1 million gamble, it is car number 9 running out in the second position. That, of course, is Scott Dixon, who leads Dario Franchitti at this point by 7 points in the chase for the championship. Directly behind him is his teammate, Dan Weldon, who told all of us we thought at the beginning of the season that he would be the contender after he just emaciated the rest of the field at Homestead. He has a problem right now. He can't serve as a wingman for his teammates because he cannot hear his spotter. Directly behind Weldon and putting a hard charge on is Helio Castroneves. Castroneves, who has been threatened throughout the season, having good times and bad times, was running with the front runners throughout the course of the day, but now he finds himself, Vince Welch, a little bit further in the back of the pack where the action is.
Well, Jack, and Dario Franchitti is right behind Helio Castroneves. Of course, Franchitti battling with Dixon for the championship. Franchitti's car working better on the high line, and it's cost him a couple of positions. Also, as he was trying to conserve fuel a bit, he lost a couple of positions. I just talked with their fuel engineer, Dave Seifert. He said, we need a yellow to make it to the end. That's not good news for the 27.
Behind Dario Franchitti is teammate Danica Patrick, who said earlier in the week that Chicago is only about winning. Not only is she still looking for that first win, but she wants to help Dario Franchitti win the championship, and that's exactly what she's doing right now as she continues on behind him. She's still battling that rev limiter problem, and guys, she will have to come in before this end of the race for fuel.
On the right side of your screen, that's Tony Kanaan coming in after he had to make a pit stop. Did not stop during that last extended caution. I'm sure that'll be second guessed by some of the fans and the faithful, but he hasn't really been a factor since that early tire going down. He's been fighting hard, but just never could get back into the mix. Right now, it is Hornish, Dixon, and Weldon running in your top 3, and Dario Franchitti in 5th. And you see what would happen in the championship. The points right now, Dixon would win it. That's Hideki Muto in the 60 car as Danica Patrick goes underneath. And that is not for position because Muto is a lap down. Now, obviously, 2 different years that the championship has been tied, including last year, going into the 2003 finale, there was a tie for the lead. But there has been one substantial blowout in series history, and that brings us to our GoDaddy.com trivia question. What is that biggest margin of victory? And the clock is ticking. Do you know the answer there, Mr. Goodyear?
I'm stumped on this one.
So was I. I have to be honest. I was stumped on this. We always talk about the closest. 105 points back in 2001. Sam Hornish Jr., who is currently running, guess where? Right out in front over Buddy Lazier. Right now, Hornish doing what he wants to do, capping off the season with what could be his second win. And we drop back a little bit further. Scott Dixon, Dan Weldon, Helio Castroneves, and then Dario Franchitti. That's your top 5, and there you're on board with Danica Patrick as she is running in 6th place. She's coming off her career best finish, a second last week at Belle Isle. She's had 2 third-place runs earlier this year. We talked to her about this year at Andretti Green Racing.
I think that it was a really good growing year for me. I think that I was really challenged within the team, both with car setup and engineering and driving. And I think that it's really helped me overall as a driver become much more well-rounded, not just able to, you know, drive in traffic, but, you know, get in and out of the pits quickly and improve my road course racing. It's been a big improvement for me, so I think there was a lot of areas that have improved that I didn't even expect.
So as you continue to see, the question is obviously when does she get that first win? It looked like she might have made the run for it today, and then that little brush with Dan Weldon got her down below the line, and she's been fighting back ever since. Meanwhile, right behind her, let's give a little love to the Iron Man of IndyCar racing. His 138th straight start. He's the last car on the lead lap in 7th place, Vince Welsh, and we're talking about Scott Sharp.
That is indeed the fact. You see him there in the bright green Patron car. His first year with the Ray Hall Letterman team, and Sharp has been very happy with the strides that the team has made. They've got a good engineering staff, and he believes they're in excellent position to make some more significant strides in the offseason. And there you see the number of starts in a row he's made, and he's also completed the most laps this season. So Iron Man on a couple of different fronts, Marty.
That's right. He's completed all but 22, and he's on the lead lap again. His best was a 3rd at Iowa and Michigan. Right now, he's running in 7th. All right, let's check out what's going on up towards the front of the pack. And it looks like Sam Hornish has peeled off as he is heading for pit lane. And yes, there he is. So Sam Hornish going to have to take some fuel here late in the race with 16 laps to go. Jack Arute.
Well, you heard Roger Penske calling his charge in. It will be fuel only, no tires. It will be a time spot, having calculated just how much fuel they need. And there you hear it. Go, go, go. They didn't need much. But boy, what did they say? You still have to have enough to finish, and it was about 2.5 gallons they were short, guys.
Well, now it's up to everybody else, or else Sam's race is over. And we know some guys are going to be trying to go the distance. Remember, folks, they do not have the fuel knob anymore. They can't lean the motor out. Everybody runs on full rich. And here comes Helio Castroneves. So he is going to stop here with 15 laps to go.
Remember, both those Penske cars pitted back on lap 130. Franchitti came in at lap 148. Jack?
Now watch, Rick Reutemann and the crew for Helio Castroneves have laid out the tires, but don't be fueled. Don't be fooled, that is, with a slip of the tongue. It could be fuel only. They were very mum about this, but when you're this far back, sometimes it's worth the gamble. No, just the fuel you need to finish, and Helio Castroneves will dance his way back out onto the racetrack, guys.
One of the things that I'm keeping an eye on is if everybody else has to pit, does Tony Kanaan at least get a chance to come back for a win? Remember, he stopped a while back when he had to. He was off cycle. There's Dario Franchitti side by side with Danica Patrick.
And Danica was actually waving outside the cockpit, waving her hand to Dario, saying, go ahead, and just going into turn 3, and certainly that's what Dario did.
Vince, you've got more?
Well, they've just communicated with Danica Patrick earlier, telling her don't get side by side with Dario because it just slows the two of you down. But as you can see, Danica definitely prefers the lower line while Dario prefers the upper line, and that's creating some issues between the two. Dario Franchitti has to have a yellow or he will not make it to the finish. They've got to come in for a splash of fuel, but they're holding off to the last possible moment. Jack Arute?
Well, Vince, it's not quite so bad for Scott Dixon, but it is a case. Can Dixon do what he's been able to do so many races? Manufacture ethanol with his right foot. 3.4 miles to the gallon is the max, is what they need minimally. That is one of the reasons why Scott Dixon has been nursing the throttle just a bit. I just asked Mike Hull, can you go the distance? He looked at me and said, I hope so.
Well, but the thing is, until right now, when Dan Weldon takes the lead, we've known all year long the guy out front usually gets the worst fuel mileage, and now he tucks in behind in 2nd place with Dario on his outside in 3rd.
And the good news, Marty, is Dan Weldon has gotten his spotter back. The radio communications has been reestablished, so Weldon is playing a role now with all the instruments working on that target Chip Ganassi machine.
That's Milka Duno down low as she gets blown by very quickly as she is many laps down.
Sometimes that car goes so slow, Marty, I think they're going to put a zip code on that thing.
Another lap vehicle, as you can see, some people still trying to peel off, make it to pit lane. This battle up front, really, it's Dan Weldon leading Scott Dixon, and maybe this is what gets him to the finish line with enough fuel, because he can tuck up under Weldon's wing, and you can see the points. If the race ends right now, Dixon wins by 2.
I guess I'm just amazed when they came in at lap 148 with the fuel mileage we thought they were getting, as many laps as they thought they'd be able to make underneath green. We had all those yellows that I thought they'd be able to make it to the end. Quite frankly, I'm amazed that they'll have to come in.
And Weldon looks like he's out of fuel. He peels off. So now Dixon's alone.
Remember, he came in at lap 135, though. That's the key thing for Weldon. Everybody else came in lap 148.
And Scott, you want a panicked look. You want a panicked look. It came from Mike Hull. He just saw a flash of red car go by, did not see the rear end plates. For a moment, he thought it was his driver.
Well, and Danica Patrick has peeled off. And oh, a spin into pit lane. Just as she started the season at Miami, she spins here, coming into pit lane at the final race of the season.
Guys, they're going to make it to the end now.
And now people will be wondering, like we've seen before, was this on purpose to help her teammate in a fuel situation?
Well, I know what you're saying, Marty, but both those cars, Franchitti and Dixon, both pitted at lap 148. The in-lap and the out-lap is what she's been working on so many times previously to make her speed go faster throughout her pit stops. Let's listen. Oh, you know something? Very aggressive with the throttle. Got off the gas, the back end gets light and swings around. I don't think it's an advantage for Franchitti, because the advantage is both Franchitti and for Dixon.
Yeah, I don't think she did it on purpose, but I'm just saying you're going to have that. I mean, we
sure.
had it last year at Sonoma when Marco Andretti and Brian Herta's deal went down.
Yeah. Pop the clutch. Ignition on.
Kim Green giving instructions.
Go to the left-hand lane there. We're going to come and get you. We're going to put tires and fuel.
With 5 laps to go, you can see that Danica getting pushed down pit lane. They're trying to get it to refire, but I'm not sure she's understanding it.
Now here's the neat thing. With Green coming up with only a few laps left, the 2 championship contenders, Dixon and Franchitti, 1 and 2, down to a restart.
4 laps to go.
Who gets the best restart?
It's a little critical. So do what you can do while we can, Mike. Yeah, working on it.
You heard John Anderson, fuel situation critical. I'm working on it, was Dario's response.
Means keep it in a taller gear, don't work the throttle.
Vince, you've got more?
Very, very close for Dario Franchitti, even with this yellow. John Anderson, you heard him say, work on the fuel, and Dario said, I'm working on it. John Anderson also told him, regardless of the fuel situation, this restart is critical. Guys, the championship could very well come down to this final restart here in just a moment.
Every year, the drama seems to get better. I don't know how you topped last year, but here we go again with what will be 3 laps to go this time by. It's Dixon in front of Franchitti. Both are on fumes. Look at Mike Hull. Sam Hornish, Elio Castroneves, 3rd and 4th. There's John Anderson. And you want to talk about knots in your stomach? They've got them. And they're probably about as big as both your fists.
But this is going to be a 2-lap shootout. Save fuel here while you can. Go to 1 as you come down the back. And then give it all you can. Yeah, 10-4 will do.
Okay, you heard. They think it's going to be a 2-lap shootout.
Hey, guys, let me quickly update you. Mike Hull just told Scott Dixon he's going to have to be careful with the throttle as well, so they're still trying to manufacture ethanol with the right foot, too.
And that's Scott Dixon's mom right there. Of course, Dixon from New Zealand. His team owner, Chip Ganassi.
The stress that's on all the team members right now, all the guys that work on the car so hard throughout the whole year, get the cars ready for race weekends, the ownership, the management group, the engineers. It's a little easier sometimes for the driver than it is for the crew.
You heard the call. We're back to green flag racing. 2 laps to decide the championship, and they're out front on the high side. It's Dario. Underneath, it is Scott Dixon. Who has enough fuel? Coming out of 2.
And Dixon's pushing Dario up to the high line, but he's got to watch the low side because here comes the 6 car of Sam Hornish, who might just play a part on who gets the surge across the line for the final lap.
Coming to the white flag. 1 lap to go, this time by. The championship at stake. Who's going to get it? Will it be Scott Dixon from New Zealand or this year's Indy 500 winner, Dario Franchitti from Scotland? Down the backstretch for the final time. Dixon in control. Into 3. If Dario has anything, he's going up, and Dixon's out of fuel. Dixon is out of fuel. Dario Franchitti's going to win the race and the championship.
That is perfect, mate. Unbelievable. Stop in turn 3. Stop in turn 3. Stop in turn. Using a left. That was mine.
That gentleman you saw was Dario's father, George. That's him right there. There is Scott Dixon out of fuel in turn number 1. And I don't think Dario has much fuel left in him either. Unbelievable. Woo. What a finish.
Ashley Judd, Dario's wife, said to me this morning, said, you know something, I hope you have great things to say about him at the end of the race.
Vince?
George Franchitti, your son just won the IndyCar championship. How good does that feel?
Oh, that just feels unbelievable. I just can't believe it. He's fought all year. I mean, it's been really close, and he's done a great job. I'm really proud of him.
Marty and Scott talked at the beginning of the show about the nerves the drivers endure, but how about the nerves of the parents? How was it for you over the past day or so?
I can't. Yeah, a lot of nerves. Not showing them, but yeah, a lot of nerves.
A lot of nerves and a few tears as well. Marty?
Unbelievable. The finish here at Chicagoland. That's about the only way you can describe it. Coming out of turn 4 as Scott Dixon runs out of fuel, and second place becomes first place with Dario Franchitti taking the win and the championship. We'll go side by side. When we come back, we'll talk to the winner of 2007. The Peak Antifreeze IndyCar 300, presented by Mr. Clean, brought to you by Peak Antifreeze. When you peak, you win. Optima Batteries, the ultimate power source. And Honda, proud sponsor of the Indy Racing League IndyCar Series. Back here at Chicagoland Speedway, a heartbroken Scott Dixon, 1 corner away from the trophy, the championship, and $1 million. And he gets a hug from team owner Chip Ganassi. And you saw Ashley Judd, Dario's wife. She's breathless. Can't believe she's got a Scottish flag wrapped around her. And there is Dario waiting to be picked up to come back for the celebration. Let's check in with Vince.
With Scott Dixon just getting congratulations from his chief mechanic, Ricky Davis. Scott, how can you put into words what that felt like when that sputtered on you?
Yeah, it's just a shame that it came down to a fuel race. You know, I think our car was clearly quicker all day. And, you know, just trying to save fuel. It wasn't our day. I think, you know, the 27 car was getting much better fuel mileage all day. He seemed to be able to go longer. And that's what it came down to. So it's tough, man.
Congratulations on a great season.
Thank you.
Marty.
Thank you, Vince. As a very heartbroken but classy guy, Scott Dixon. Let's go back and take you to the last lap. As what an unbelievable moment.
Amazing that Dario, in this situation, when Dixon starts to run out of fuel, as we'll see here in just a couple more turns, that he doesn't collect the back of him. Remember, they're doing 215 miles an hour. Now Dario's starting to get a bit of a tow, trying to set himself up for a run going down the backstretch into 3. And all of a sudden the car will cough of Dixon, and you see the evasive maneuver that Franchitti takes. Remember, you don't think about that. That just happens 215 miles an hour. Now he's feeling just, we've won this thing. Let's listen. Whoa, that's how close it was.
And let's check in with Brianne Pettigo.
Marty, I'm with proud Ashley Judd, wife of the IndyCar Series champion, Dario Franchitti. How are you right now?
Oh my goodness, well, I'm extremely proud, and it's a really tough break for the Target guys in the 9 car. They were so strong today. Scott was very quick, and I know he liked it up front without a lot of traffic and all that clean air, and we just did not have a great car today. I don't know if the track changed from yesterday when Dario had that nice pole time, and plus it was our worst nightmare. Tony's out, you know, and we had no help at all, and you saw the Penske's work so well and the Target guys work so well, and my sweet little husband was just out there with the bloody sharks. I mean, they just sharked him all day, and he never gave up hope. He just hung in there and stayed really tough, and obviously was in a great position. And I know that this is not very sportsmanlike, but they got to get the 23 car off the track. It's very dangerous, and I'm so tired of holding my tongue. When a car is 10 miles off the pace, it's not appropriate for it to be racing. People's lives are at stake, and that's my, I'll come off my pulpit from that, or my soapbox or whatever. But I'm very, very, very proud of Dario. He did a great job. And now I think he'll tell you how much he really wanted it.
Well, I'm going to go let her find her husband, guys.
And her reference to the 23 is Milka Duno, and you heard us talk about how slow she was on the track. You draw your own conclusions. That's the trophy. Here comes the champ. Stay with us. We're going side by side. The Peak Antifreeze IndyCar 300, presented by Mr. Clean, brought to you by Peak Antifreeze. When you peak, you win. XM Radio with Indy Racing, exclusive coverage from the wheels up, and ethanol, America's high-performance renewable fuel. Just a reminder that ABC World News or your local news will be coming up on the East Coast right as soon as we get done. Let's send it down to the podium, Jack.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for your new 2007 IndyCar champion, Dario Franchitti, and winner of today's race at the Chicagoland Speedway. And before we get to the real good hardware, Dario, Rick Jago, President, Jerry Riccone, Mark Naus, and Vice President of Marketing, and Mr. Clean need to present to you the trophy for the win today.
Well, on behalf of Peak Antifreeze and Mr. Clean, congratulations on winning the Peak Antifreeze 300 and the championship. Great job.
But more importantly, Dario, as you get your trophy, let's talk for a moment. Let's talk quickly for a moment about those final laps that earned you the $1 million prize and the championship.
Well, most of the race I was just sitting there. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't pass the guys in front because they were running side by side. And there was times the car wasn't handling so well, and in that last stint it was handling well, but I couldn't do anything. And then people started pitting. Dan ran out of fuel, and it was just Scott and I. And we came down that back stretch, and I was drafting him, and I was trying to get the slingshot, and just as I pulled out, I saw him slow down, and I almost hit the back of him because I was just pulling out, and we shot up the track, and that was it. So, you know, it was some good fuel saving and some great strategy by my boys. This Canadian club team, the whole Andretti Green team, they are the best team in the world, and I tell you what, no, they're just fantastic.
An Indianapolis 500 victory, becoming the second Scotsman in history, and now the first Scotsman to win the IndyCar championship. Describe this entire season in 5 words or less.
I can do it in 2 or 3, up and down. I mean, it's been a crazy season. There was times we thought we were looking really good, and there was times things just wouldn't go right. And today we got some of our mojo back from the middle of the season, so couldn't be happier.
Dario, these fans in America wants to know, will you be back next year to defend this title?
You know, Jack, I don't know right now, and I just want to enjoy today with these guys. Go out tonight, we'll have a little party, and then we'll decide.
Well, right now it's time to present this championship trophy, and to do so is Brian Barnhart here, the president. He's not here.
He's probably getting resuscitated.
He's probably getting resuscitated upstairs for the lack of that.
We're going to change the name on the track.
Come here, my friend. Come here, Dario. First the Borg Warner, and now the second most important piece of hardware in IndyCar racing. Congratulations on the IndyCar championship and this trophy and $1 million that you'll receive on Tuesday.
Thank you. As I say, it's been a great season, and I would like to say I've enjoyed every minute of it, but there's a couple of moments when I was upside down that it wasn't so good fun, but I've had so much fun working with these guys, all my teammates. and I've really enjoyed hanging out with the fans, and it's been a blast. So again, thank you to everybody. This means a lot, and thanks to Canadian Club and all our sponsors.
Ladies and gentlemen, at Indy, I welcomed him to immortality. Now it's your turn to welcome him as your 2007 IndyCar champion.
All right, thanks, Jack. Let's take a look at the final points, and we'll show you exactly how it all shakes out, as it's 13, the final margin. Tony Kanaan third, Dan Weldon, Sam Hornish, Elio Castroneves, Danica Patrick in seventh, Scott Sharp, Buddy Rice, and Thomas Scheckter round out the top 10. All right, so for Scott Goodyear, Jack Arute, Vince Welch, Brianne Pettigo, I'm Marty Reed, and a big thanks to our ESPN crew. It has been a very long, sometimes very damp year. Great work, guys. It's been fun working with everybody. As we say goodbye, it's coming up next, except on the West Coast, it's ABC World News or your local news over most of these stations. Congratulations to Dario Franchitti, the 07 IndyCar Series champion. Thanks so much for joining us this year. We'll see you next March. This is Marty Reed till we meet again.